Welcome to FT World. Matteo Renzi, Italy's youthful Prime Minister, has unveiled a budget which is full of tax cuts, but a bit light on spending cuts. Will this do much to revive growth in Italy? And how will it go down in Brussels? Discussing this with me today is Lorenzo Codogno, visiting professor at the LSE and former chief economist at the Italian Treasury. So Lorenzo, we have a new budget by Renzi. Can you tell us a little bit about what's in it?
Well, it is a strongly expansionary budget. Clearly, the trend projections made by the government call for a deficit of 1.4, and the government decided to increase the deficit, moving from 1.4 to 2.2% the next year. And if Brussels accepted the extra flexibility for the wave of immigration, we would actually go to 2.4. So it's a very expansionary budget, which is, I don't know, maybe not fully justified given the state of the economy. According to government projections, growth will actually go to 1.6% next year.
Now, you're saying obviously it's expansionary, but where is this stimulus going? Which taxes is it cutting?
Well, it's a mixed bag here. There are very good measures in my view. Actually, there are plenty of very good measures, particularly the reduction in taxation on corporate tax. And there are other measures to reduce the overall burden on labor, which is positive. There are incentives to stimulate capital expenditure by firms, which are, I would say, very good. And there are other things that I would personally not really very much agree with. I mean, let's face two major areas of disagreement. The first one is on spending cuts, as you mentioned, quite disappointing picture, because back last year, the spending cuts for 2016 were expected at 1 percentage point of GDP, that is 16 billion. Now, in the spring of this year, they were reduced to 10 billion, and now in the budget, they are only 5. That means that basically the government has not been able to tackle the big, I would say, sacred cows of the spending in Italy, that is local administration, the public administration, and bits and pieces of tax expenditure. So I think this is pretty disappointing. The other disappointing bit is that the government decided, in a kind of populistic move, or to give a significant cut on the housing tax, basically abolishing it for first residencies, which everybody knows that it's not the best way to stimulate growth. And certainly it's not a priority for Italy at this stage. It was actually one of the recommendations in the past on Italy by Brussels to introduce this tax, and was painfully introduced by previous governments. Now with a stroke of a pen, it's gone. And I think that is not a good decision.
So let's talk a little bit about Brussels. Today, Matteo Renzi said if Brussels doesn't like our budget, we'll just send it straight to them unchanged, straight back to them unchanged. So he's getting ready for a confrontation. What do you think will happen in the coming months?
Well, in the context of the presentation of the budget, the government is also sending what is called budgetary plans to Brussels. And Brussels has to come back within a couple of weeks or a little bit more with the feedback. What's going to happen? Well, I think Brussels will have no choice but to highlight the critical points. And the critical points are, again, these two that I mentioned, but also the very expansionary stance overall, because the government takes all the flexibility that is possible, stretching really the flexibility to the limit. Now, they will point out this. Is it going to lead to a kind of flat rejection of the budget? I don't think so. I don't think so, because this Commission is slightly different. It's more political, and the mood in Europe has changed. There is much more flexibility now in terms of budget assessments, and the situation has changed also in other countries. Now we have seen Austria calling for more flexibility on the budget because of the wave of immigration flows. There are other countries, Spain, that proposed a very expansionary budget as well. So Italy at least is below the 3% threshold, and is, at least on paper, pretending to respect all the European rules. So for that reason, although it is very, very borderline, I think it will get a pass eventually.
Final question, does this budget make you more or less optimistic about Italy's growth prospects?
Well, clearly, given that it is a very expansionary budget, it makes me more optimistic because this will actually push GDP growth next year. However, it's like driving a bit faster, pushing on the accelerator, but without any spare tire. So if Italy by chance happen to come across another debt crisis or whatever, there will be no flexibility on the budget side. And so that is a little bit risky. But we have the situation unfortunately is such that we are back to pro-cyclical budgets. It was too tight during the recession, during the difficult years, 2011, 2012, and not that it was a choice by the government, but it was under the pressure of financial markets, under the pressure of other European countries. Now it becomes pro-cyclical again. In other words, it is expansionary while the economy is expanding, which is not the best policy that you would expect. Actually, the rules are expected to do exactly, to push you in exactly the opposite direction. That is introducing counter-cyclical budget, but this is not the case this time.
Well, thank you very much for being with us today, Lorenzo. So Matteo Renzi is taking a risky gamble with this budget. Let's see whether it will pay off.